request to the server. And here, I don't know if I can make it larger. This here, what we send back, is what's called JSON LD, and that is essentially also just RDF on top of JSON. So this is what we send back to the server. What's even cooler, the server can then respond with JSON LD to say, actually I've modified the content. So for example, let's say you have a form field where you can enter geo-coordinates or an address. The server could then populate whatever is missing. So if you have geo-coordinates, you can populate the address and put it back into the server, and then you would automatically update the content. Yeah. So this is so what we're doing here. We're using standards. We're using RDFA. We're using JSON LD, and this inline editing capabilities themselves, they're actually provided by another project called create.js. So create.js.org provides this, and yeah, as you can see here, so there are different editors integrated. It works with Halo editor, which is a very simple editor that you saw in the demo. It works with Aloha, it works with CK editor, and different editors that you can embed in there. And there are multiple different widgets. There's a demo here. Yeah, in this demo they're also showing, so if you go to edit, here they're also allowing you to add an element. So here I click on add, and that's why this element showed up here. I can start adding the elements here, things like that. So this is create.js. Yeah, and actually create.js itself also uses various other libraries. It's built on top of Backbone.js. So you can also leverage Backbone.js to do even more fancy things. Yeah, quite a cool project. Okay, you raised your hand, sorry.
Yes, here we are modifying the existing pages or content.
Yes.
What are the means of creating?
So, personally, I'm not such a big fan of creating content with inline editing. So here I just showed you at least, so they have, so in create.js they have the concept of collections. So here they define that there's a collection of blocks, and this collection can actually be mixed collections. So Typo 3 has also implemented this, and actually Drupal is also implementing create.js. So this add button here could also open a little selector where you choose the type of thing that you want to add. So this is the way that you could, for example, add new elements to a page. Of course, you could also then have drag and drop to reorder the collection and things like that. So this is the way how you could add things to a web page. Now, the next thing that you always are talking about is adding the page entirely. And for that, you could have something like, let's say, where are we here? Homepage, right? So here, this is the navigation, and you, for example, could say this is a collection as well. You click add a new item here, and then when you click on it, you go to a page that doesn't exist yet, and you have a forehand, for example, that allows you to then create it. That could work, for example. Similar to a wiki in a sense, right? You would just add it to the menu first, but since there's no code, there's no actual content behind it, you would let the forehand handle it when you click on it, and then you can add that. But personally, I'm not such a big fan of creating new content via inline editing. I think inline editing is great for editing, not really for content creation. Now, at the same time, I want to say, I think another shortcoming of CMSs is that they try to be a one-size-fits-all, not only in terms of code, but also in terms of administrative experience. Now, let's imagine you have someone in the human resource department, and all they ever do is add a new picture to a website, right? Let's say here we have the deep.ch, we have a who here, right? That might be everything they ever edit is that they add a new face here, right? But yeah, being able to do that inline would be great, because then I don't have to teach them anything about the admin tool. I just say, you know, the website, okay, you can navigate to the list, you know, there's an add button, add the person, done, right? So that's great. And maybe, you know, maybe another person, they might, you know, their responsibility is adding a new project to the website, right? So maybe they do indeed need to create a new page. So they would have an add button here, add a new element here, and then once that element is created, they will click on it. The 404 handle will come and will say, okay, this page is empty, choose a template and do that. So I could imagine that this could work for very specific use cases, right? Where you really say, instead of forcing everybody to learn the entire CMS, you're saying, okay, this person, all they ever do is this tiny bit in the CMS, right? So let's just make that bit as simple as possible for them. And I don't know, who guys knows Magnolia? It's a Java content management system. Okay, so they just released their version 5, and they have a very interesting feature in the backend where they basically collect data about how the user is using the admin tools, and based on that, they will dynamically present them the most used buttons when they come to the website. So
learning system.
Yes. So let's say you're training a person on the CMS the first day, and as you're training them, you're also training the admin tool to know which buttons to present to the user. Right? So personalization not only on the front end, but on the admin as well. I think that's another thing that CMSs can do and should do. Okay, as you can see, I'm logged in here as well. Yeah, so this is actually a live website. So here, as you can see, this is the website from the company I work for. And you see here the elements that are, I can edit, are highlighted here, and I can just modify this. But let's not do that. Yes, so this is, I think I've shown most of what is currently possible. Actually, maybe let me briefly touch upon the block system a little bit more. I will show you this quickly in the admin tool. I have the home page here, and the home page has some child nodes. So this is a block, a so-called container block, and this container block has 3 children as blocks. I can rearrange them, for example. Because the cool thing about HPCR is that not only it supports tree structure, but the children are ordered, right? So I just move child 3 to the position 2. And if you remember the website, then the block, this static block that we had, that one just moved from here to there, by just moving the block away. That's kind of cool. And more importantly, really, you have the ability to nest blocks and things like that. So this is really so here we have the home page, and I dumped the home page. And you see here, so this is this additional block node. This is the container block. Here you see the class it maps to. So this is the PHP class it maps to. Then here you see the child elements. So one is the RSS block for the RSS feed. Which node did I just show you? Because I limited the depth. I'll show you the entire tree structure. So this is the entire tree structure. This is the home node. These are the translations for the home node. And these are the children. So this is the container block for these different 3 additional blocks, and this is the RSS block that is also attached.
And what about templating?
Yes, so template is a good question, and we can actually see this up here. If I remember correctly, at least we do. I thought we had it here. So the templating system works. So there are multiple levels how you can override the templates. And let me show you this one here. So here in the routing system, what you can determine based on the object type that is stored, you can do multiple things. You can determine the controller it should use for rendering. So for example here, controllers by type. This means that if I have a property, It's going to find what route is responsible, and it's going to repopulate the request object with this information. So it's going to write into the attribute parameter bag, it's going to write the name of the controller to use and certain other things. Now, in our routing system, what we do is, so we come in, we see the pattern of the request, and we're going to look at possible candidates that could match this based on the pattern. So if you're going to the website /en/projects, for example, we're going to look if there's /en/projects, if not, if there's /en, and if not, if there's /. So we're going to automatically look up the chain. Now, as soon as we find something, we're passing this to the Symfony 2 route matcher, which is not part of the CMF project anymore, and it's going to determine which is the best match. Then after that, we have what we call enhancers. And these look at the route that was matched and the related content that was matched, and based on that, we can add more data to the request attributes, right? And so one of the things that we can look at is we can look at some property, and so there's, for example, a property type that you could define, and based on that property, we will set the controller to this. Or we could look at the content class that is related to the route, and based on that, we can determine what controller to use. And the same thing with templates. So, for example, here templates by class, we say if our content class is an instance of static content, we'll use this template, for example. And so this is how you can do it. Another way you can do it is actually in the content and in the route, you can also override this. So you can say, even though I have a static content instance, I want to override this with something else. Like you can explicitly write that in the content. Let me try to find. Hopefully. Yeah, in this admin tool, we don't have an able to show these attributes. That sucks. I need to do that. Maybe we have it over here. No. But so the fundamental idea is that you can configure this just on a project level based on some attributes in the content or the class that it's mapping to, and then you can override that in the actual content as well. So in the content you say, I always want this content to be rendered with this template. But for the most part, like I said, I want to keep the rendering or the presentation separate of the content. So I would usually just do this, maybe configure this in the route, not in the content. But you have this flexibility if you want. Does that answer the question?
So what is the role of controller here? I mean, do we need to create controllers for each?
For the most part, you don't. For the most part, you don't. So what we have is we have a very generic content controller that we ship as part of one of our bundles, with the content bundle. And this is a very simple one. So it has like this index action here. It gets the request object, it gets the content document that is a reference with the route, and then optionally, if the route defines a template, a specific template, it also gets that as a string. Then, here it's just going to figure out default template if necessary, and then it's just going to render the response. And for the most part, this will work. Like very rarely do we need to customize. But in theory, you could customize it. You could, create your own controller if you want to also fetch some ORM data or something like this. But for the most part, you don't. You don't need to. And maybe I think I've briefly going to show you is just a brief overview of our bundles. Actually, I can show a slide after this. I want to reach out to that. So that's also a good slide. I briefly touched upon this already. So what we have here is the normal request process from Symfony 2. You have a request, it goes to the Symfony 2 router, it determines the controller then messes with the view model and creates a response. Now what we created is what we call the chain router. And the idea here is that in a Symfony 2 CMF project, you might still have some static routes that you don't want to have in the database because they're static, right? So we created a chain router which allows you to create a chain of routers. So you can use the core router from Symfony 2 and chain a dynamic router on top of it. Now, which is quite cool. For example, the Easy Publish guys are using this. So Easy Publish 5, they migrated to Symfony 2, but inside their Symfony 2 Easy Publish 5, they actually have a fallback to Easy Publish 4. So they're using the chain router. So when a request comes in, they're going to first look into the Symfony 2 router for the static route, then they're going to look into a dynamic router for the Easy Publish 5 route, and if it doesn't find anything, they're going to automatically fall back to the Easy Publish 4 router. But again, for any code that is using the routing system, it doesn't know about it. It's just suddenly it's talking to the chain router instead of the core router. Yes, and then we offer a generic controller for most cases and things like that. So that's sort of the chain that we have. I think I've explained this. Okay. So just a brief overview of the bundles that we have. So we have the core bundle. The core bundle is, the idea is that it just provides common infrastructure for the different bundles. So one of the cool features it offers, so each of these bundles can be, most of them can, sorry. Most of these bundles can be used independently, and so they need to be configured independently, which however means that you're going to write a lot of configuration again and again. So for example, the locales, the languages that you want to support. Many bundles need this configuration. And with the core bundle, you just need to configure it once and it's going to automatically configure it for all bundles. Then it also provides some interfaces and Sonata admin extensions. So one is the publish workflow that I briefly showed. There's another thing for creating slugs, so converting some text title into a URL compatible string and things like that. And it also provides a Twig extension that allows you to do some simple PHP-CR OEM queries. Like it allows you, for example, you could pass a content document to the template and then say, give me all the children and things like that. It also provides like a previous and next button. So for example, when you want to create a blog, for example, you can just pass in the current object and you can say previous and next, and then it will automatically figure out if there's a previous and next. It's going to walk through the children or the siblings. But actually this extension is also quite smart. You can even walk down the tree. So if you have a deep tree structure, it can just walk through that with previous and next buttons. You can do that with the Twig extension. And then we added some BC helpers to make it possible to still use Symfony 2.2 because there are some things that we added to Symfony 2.3 for the CMF. And we just made sure that we can still use the CMF for Symfony 2.2. And the next thing is a very simple bundle, the content bundle. The content bundle just provides you a very simple content document class that you can use for persisting your content. It also provides this very simple controller, and it also provides a Sonata admin class for using Sonata admin for administration. Then the menu bundle. The menu bundle actually is built on top of KMP menu, which is a very popular bundle for doing menus, and our system adds this again to make it possible to have a dynamic data source. That being said, KMP menu bundle in version 1 is not very great for managing large menu trees because the problem is that the code, how this works right now, it's always going to read the entire menu out and then it's going to decide how to actually show. So if you have a big menu tree, it's going to redecide. KMP menu 2, which is it's been under development for a long time, will hopefully fix this. Then there's the block bundle, which is integrated with the Sonata block bundle, which again just adds PHP-CR ODM integration. The create bundle, this is what handles the create.js integration. And you can use this without using PHP-CR again. So you don't have to use PHP-CR to use the create bundle. Then we have this Sonata PHP-CR ODM bundle. The biggest thing that we add there is the capability to handle the PHP-CR ODM document and also to have these tree structures and things like that managed. And then we have tons of others. So we have a tree browser, which is for this JavaScript trees. We have a media bundle for asset management. We have a blog bundle. We have a search bundle that just gives you a simple search. A simple CMS bundle. So this is basically what this bundle is an example of taking the three separate structures that we have for content, menu, and routes to put that all into one structure. So this is what the simple CMS bundle offers. Then, like I said, the Lunetics locale bundle, we're working with the developers, but it's not part of the CMF initiative. And then, of course, we're integrating lots of the Sonata bundle. Yes, and yeah, last slide. So all the code that we're doing is up on GitHub. License is MIT for all the bundles and the components, so very little license. And for PHP-CR, and it's mostly Apache license, which is unfortunate because the Apache license is incompatible with the GPL license. So we're currently actually relicensing it so that it will be both MIT and Apache. Actually, the problem is we're just waiting for one developer to agree because all the others have already agreed. So we have about, for PHP-CR and Jekyll, we probably have about 60 contributors or something like this, and so all but one have agreed. So I need to hunt this guy down. Yeah, and that's basically it. Oh yeah, maybe, so we are on the IRC channel, you can reach us, and there's almost always somebody around. All the core developers are in Europe, but that's, works quite well with the time zone from Kiev, not so well for the US people maybe. We have a mailing list. Most of the discussion is on the developers mailing list because right now the website and the wiki. And then maybe the last thing I should mention, so in terms of stable release, we don't have a stable release yet. We just have the first 4 bundles have been moved to release candidate 1 state. And I'm very certain that we'll have a stable release this month. But I don't know. If you would have asked me earlier this year, I was very certain we would have a stable release in June. Again, the code itself is reliable. It can be used in production. It's just that we're breaking BC because we're changing some things. So the last big changes we did was we were changing some of the configuration to be more consistent between the bundles and things like that. We do have change logs for all the bundles now and upgrade guides. So we've maintained that for a month or 2 already. So
I can't find your slides.
So the slides, they're actually up on the CMF.Symfony website. And there are actually some more slides there. So if we go here, then you have slides here. So these are the first slides, big picture. Then there's also more details about PHP-CR ODM. And then the routing and menu concepts are also more explained, and then all the links to all the bundles that we have, and things like that. And the slides are, yeah, as you saw, they're HTML, so, oh, it's broken. No, it's just here, I think. Okay, yeah, so we can just close it there. And yeah, we are very welcoming for new contributors. We invest quite a lot of time in teaching new people that are coming to the project. So if you're motivated and want to help, then we will gladly teach you more, and especially the IRC, we frequently have people that ask questions and ask just how to integrate this into a specific project. Usually there's somebody around that will be helpful in trying to get it set up. Okay, so that's it. If more questions, I'm willing to answer them. Any more questions? Otherwise, we can just go to somewhere and do something.
When you sold entity physically on each page, what is this described
Thank you very much. Name is?
Sergey, and my name is Carol. Okay?